Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. Today we're doing something a little different. We're live and in person with two of the best leaders in my area, the great state of Iowa. God bless Iowa City. We're with the new men's head basketball coach, Ben McCollum, and assistant basketball coach, Luke Barnwell. I'm going to give you a little bit of context for these two men. Ben McCollum is a four-time national champion at the D2 level, Northwest Missouri State. Had unbelievable success at Drake, and we nabbed him last year to be the new men's head basketball coach. We're kicking this off right before the season, and we're excited for Ben and his leadership right here in Iowa City. He's an Iowa City guy, and we got him back. Luke Barnwell, head coach at Sunrise Christian. This guy's coached some of the top NBA players. He's worked with some of the most elite athletes on the planet, had a great run at Texas Tech, and Ben tapped him on the shoulder to be an assistant here in Iowa City. Guys, good to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
It's a blast.
Appreciate it, man.
And actually, a little behind the scenes, Luke didn't know he was going to be on the show until like 10 minutes ago. So.
He better be ready for some answers now.
There's going to be some heat.
And then I say, Luke, are you jumping in? And he says, whatever boss man wants. So I said, spoken like a true assistant. All right, let's dive in. So I've heard this about you, Ben, over and over. Somebody talks about Ben McCollum, a coaching style. They say one of your greatest strengths is your ability to identify talent. And ironically, you've got an example of that in Luke. So Luke actually played for you at Emporia State, right?
Not basketball talent. Not
basketball talent.
100% correct.
No, we're
for talent nonetheless.
It depends on what we're talking about here.
But you see I think it's two things, right? You see the good in others, and then you're able to pull out the good in others. And I've seen that, Luke's talked about that, in our conversations about how you get the most out of a Bennett Sturts. Some people listening might not know. I mean, Bennett's not one of the top players in the country. He was second team all conference, right?
At Division II.
Division II. Then goes to Drake, and he's the MVC player of the year. So this has been a hallmark of your success. What I want to know is, what's the art and science of pulling out the best in the people around you?
Yeah, I would say, first off, identifying the best, identifying things that are specific to you that you like, kind of go back even further, understanding that as a leader or as a manager of any type of organization, the sooner you understand that you're not that important is the sooner you become pretty important because you understand the value of people. And so you identify exactly what you need for your specific program. And then once you get them there, you identify their strengths. And the whole goal is to get them to work to their strengths consistently. It's not about eliminating their weaknesses and saying, don't do this, don't do that. You can't do this. It's, no, what can you do? What can you be great at? Be great at those two or three things. And then it naturally eliminates some of the weaknesses that they may have. And then, just loving, serving, constantly caring, and genuinely doing that with a different kind of approach. And a lot of that's not the cliche stuff of just telling somebody you love them or that kind of thing. It's actually serving. It's spending 2 or 3 hours when you don't need to spend 2 or 3 hours on something that they're a part of, or just showing those things consistently. And a lot of times then people compete for you pretty good.
Well, I've seen it already just in the short time of knowing you guys. It's like, man, leadership is a verb. It's not a noun. It's about what you do, And so I think Luke saw that and you decided to make the jump from Texas Tech, a pretty comfortable situation for a young coach. So for those that don't know your situation, Luke, I'd love for you to share. You had a decision to make last year. You're really weighing two really, really great situations at a young age. We have some leaders listening that are trying to make decisions themselves, whether it's a professional decision, personal decision. Will you kind of take us through your story of talking to coach and how you ended up at University of Iowa?
Yeah, we play each other. Around 32, and it's not fun to do that when you're close with, not only me and coach have known each other for 20 years, but like our head coach at Texas Tech and him were good friends, and me assistant coach Linder and him were really good friends. Like our staffs were so close. So
I want to pause this. So just for context's sake, because you moved past that quickly. Round of 32, your NCAA tournament, everything's on the line. Yeah. It's Drake, Texas Tech. You guys have known each other forever. Yeah. Like there's a lot of emotion that goes into this to this game. That's a unique.
Yeah, there's a lot to gain from it, but it was weird to look down the sideline and know everybody that it's people and you care about, And I'm sure that coach probably felt the same way towards us, and not only him, but like I've known B for a while, I've known Zay for a while, and I've known through him and known Coach Shaw for a while. So it was a weird feeling. And then when the game tips off, it's like you get to work. That's all you think about. But before the game, it was like awkward. Like, what the heck is happening here? After the game, it was exciting for us, probably gut-wrenching for them, and then a quick change for him. And then we were off instantly. I was shifted to like, how do we win 2 more games and keep moving? And how do we win 2 more games after that, keep moving? So it was a wild 2 weeks. We talked on the phone during the week. We were going to the Sweet 16 Elite 8, but it was in large part like trying to help him connect dots with, hey, this player is connected to this person, or here's a guy that potentially would want to work for you, or is it like it's just random communication, nothing in concrete about how you want to be here. And then when the season ended, it was like, hey, if you want to do this, we're about to have you. And I'm like, okay, here we go. So it was hard 4 or 5 days, because one day I was like, I'm going to stay, and one day I was going to leave. I obviously consulted with my wife about what was best for our family, and then I got to a point where I was like at wit's end, and I needed to just shut the world down. I shut my phone off. I honestly went inside in church for like 4 hours. I was like, I need peace, and I think in my gut I know what I want to do, but I need to get some reassurance behind it. And typically what I've learned in life is when you create space for God, He'll typically fill it. And unfortunately, I don't create enough space for Him. And I walked out of the church, and I had 2 people call me that night that just like resonated with, this is the right thing to do for my family and for me. And here we are, and thankfully I'm here. I'm blessed and all year.
So I know you know this. He talks about your leadership often, and I just remember some of our first conversations, Luke, you talking about why you chose Iowa versus staying in the situation that you were in. And you talked about Coach Mack's emphasis on culture. And I've heard you talk about culture over and over and over again. It feels like anytime you have a chance to talk about what culture is and what it means to you, you take the opportunity. But I feel like that word is overdone, and I feel like it gets talked about without context often. What does culture mean to you?
You know, I think the definition for me would be just a set of unwritten rules that everybody follows, because that's just what you do. I ultimately think that culture is the people that are in your organization for the most part, meaning if you identify, get the right people, get them to work to their strengths consistently, that creates the culture that you're looking for. I don't think there's any leader that's good enough to just create a culture without the right people on board. I still think it all goes back to the right people and getting them to perform to their best of their ability, and then it creates that culture. You know, there's discipline that goes with it. You know, there's an effort thing that goes with it. There's a toughness thing. There's a variety of things that can go with that. But I'm a firm believer that it's still the people, take care of them, get them to be great, allow them to be successful, and allow them to solution find. You know, sometimes even right now, as we're going, we just talked about it today, it was just like, some days we're a mess, and that's okay, because eventually you'll find the solutions, and that suffering and that struggle can really lead to profound solutions rather than giving them the answers all the time. But that's why you get the right people, because those people will find those solutions.
I think your focus on people and culture has given you staying power, you know, everywhere you've been. We're just working with a lot of young leaders right now, I think, that suffer from like destination addiction. Everybody wants to get to the next place, the next spot. You, Coach Mack, could have taken a lot of other opportunities earlier, chose not to. How do you feel when you think about commitment and staying power? Like, why did you stay at Northwest Missouri State as long as you did? I mean, you certainly had other offers. You're still a relatively young Division I head coach. But talk to us about why you decided to stay. I mean, you're multiple national titles in. You stayed put. Why did you stay?
I think probably for a lot of the same reasons he did it at Sunrise, was just I felt like I was still making a difference. And my objective was never to be at Division I. Like, that was never my goal when I got into coaching. My goal was to went to work for Wells Fargo for 3 months, and then thought, man, I just don't feel like I'm making the difference that I can. So I paid for my own way of graduate school, ended up becoming an assistant coach, head coach at the age of 27, and I started to have success. Well, then as success started to come, what happened was, the job offers would come, and you'd be like, do I want this? And And, there'd be a nice ego boost to it, where you had to, okay, do I actually want this? Is this something that I need to pursue? And most of the time it was just, no, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm still making a difference. And then over time, I started to notice that there was a different pull, and it was probably the pull of you're supposed to go do something else. And it was actually one of my players' dads, Sterling Hudgens, Trevor Hudgens' dad was a pastor, and it was like, hey, there's something else pulling you, and I think it's time. And it was just, it was hard, still hard. There's still days you're like, man, it was a lot easier before, but I think I needed for my own personal to grow. And then I do feel like I had more to give to other places. And, this just was the opportunity that presented itself after Drake.
I think you're a great definition of someone who is, and I think has been, underexposed and overdeveloped. We always talk about this idea of making sure that you're overdeveloped. In other words, ready for the next opportunity. And I think you're sitting next to somebody who has been underexposed and overdeveloped. And Luke Barnwell, like, what do you see about Luke's development, patience, discernment? Obviously put a lot of time into making the decision to come here and join you. I'd love for you to pick on Luke for a second. Like, what do you see in this guy that makes him great as a young leader?
Yeah, I think, kind of going with that, I think the level that he coached at, one, he had some help, but you're somewhat of a one-man band, and you're starting that thing with, again, the help of a few others from scratch, essentially, right? And building it up to what it became, where, yeah, they were producing NBA caliber players, but not only that, they were producing good human beings too. Yeah. And ended up then probably turning down as many opportunities as I did, and felt like he took the right one, going with Grant, where he's awesome. But I think when guys like Luke, specific to him, one, he's extremely high character. You always can depend on him. He's always got your back. He's fiercely loyal. Those are all elite qualities. But going with the overdeveloped, underexposed, I kind of feel like that, like me and him in that sense, where we had an opportunity to make all of our mistakes without a spotlight. So for years and years and years, we made 10,000 mistakes, which we continue to make, to this day. But we have confidence to know when we make those mistakes, part of that is the learning process. And so the outside noise doesn't bother us like that, if that makes sense. And so, people that get thrust into an environment that don't have the self-confidence because they're not overdeveloped, a lot of times, get more exposed, if you will. And so, there's a fine line between making sure that you take the opportunity, even if you're not totally ready, because quite frankly, you'll never be totally ready. But the place that I was and the place that he was, I don't think either of us was ready for either of those opportunities. I mean, I finished last place for 2 straight years. But then we were able to make mistakes, and then in that environment, more of a sheltered environment, and now to here.
I think that's one of the better things I ever shared on this podcast, that I made 10,000 mistakes, but without the spotlight. And there's a young leader listening that needs to hear that. Like, there's something really special about being underexposed, overdeveloped. One of the things that I see in Luke is I see a sense of honor. Here's where it makes me mad, is we'll be out to lunch, and then you'll call, and it'll be like 10 minutes of talking to coach, because if you call, he's answering, right? And there's like a sense of honor. Even today, like, we're, again, behind the scenes, I'm like, hey, we're ready to rock. And he's like, are you interviewing me? And then I say, yeah, Luke, we're interviewing you. And he's like, whatever coach says.
Yeah, yeah.
And
which he needs to stop doing.
Which, I mean, but he does defer. But I think about it this way, like honor produces access. It does, right? Like, if you know how to honor the people around you, I think it does give you more opportunity. Yeah. I think it opens doors. I think it gives you favor. It increases your influence. And so, Luke, I'm putting you on the spot. When you think about a spirit of honor and doing the right thing by the people around you, honoring the leaders around you, what goes through your mind? What do young leaders need to hear about honor?
Can you define that, just so my own personal growth?
Yeah. I think about making the leader's agenda your agenda. like if it matters to coach, it's going to matter to me. If it matters to this leader, it's going to matter to me.
Matter to a friend even.
Matters to a friend, it matters to me. Matters to my wife, it matters to me. And I've seen Luke lay down his own preference for the sake of what's best for other people. And I think a lot of times that looks like sacrifice. And so it's hard or it's uncomfortable or it's difficult. Like in a lunch meeting.
What I can tell you is I failed at that because I was a head coach for 10 years and I went to work at Texas Tech for the first time and I wasn't in charge. I had no idea what was going on half the time because I went from making every single decision to like, you do these 3 things really well. And so I do those 3 things really well. Like I would try to do the best I could do with those 3 things. But then it's like, you're kind of walking around, wondering around, like, what else? Like, is this all I do? So I think to coach's point, am I making mistakes? Like I've probably made some of those mistakes in the past. And it's like, you just try to figure out, okay, what does coach want and how do I help them? Because that's my job. And what does our team need? And like those 2 things have to trump what I feel is more important to myself, your ego and whatever role that you're given, your natural self is always going to be like, oh, I can do more than that. But in the same sense, it's like, what does coach want? What does our team need? And you just, that you obviously you care about the people around you that are you're doing life with every day, and you want to win. And so I know that those 2 things, if I put my ego aside and I, what does our team need and what does coach want? And I can try to figure out how to blend those 2 and do the best that I can at those every single day. Typically it'll work out. And I'll tell you, I failed. My first job I was searching a lot because I didn't really know what I'd never been an assistant coach. I went straight to being a head coach when I was 22. So, had to figure that out. It's easier. My relationship with him is different because I've known him for so long, but it's still a learning process every day. If I feel like I've got it figured out, then I'm probably not watched enough film or studied enough or working hard enough because you should never really have it mastered.
You know what I like when I hear Luke say that though, I think about, I think honor is subtle, even like when I walked in the office. So if you're listening, not watching, we're in coach's office. And so you're talking to coach. You guys are in the middle of game planning and talking strategy. I walk in, I think the average person would have said, oh, hey, Jordan walked away from coach. And maybe, you get distracted by what's happening around you. And you were locked in with coach because there's a sense of honor. There's a sense of duty. It's like, hey, we're working. We're in the middle of a conversation. I'm not going to lay down this conversation with my leader because I'm distracted. So it's a big deal. And I do think honor produces access. And part of the reason you're here at the University of Iowa as a really young assistant coach is because you've honored the people around you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and part of it, we know you, so we just really, it's Jordan.
What are you talking to this guy?
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
No, part of it is I'm trying to figure out what's in his brain. So
yeah, so that he can clean it up because I'm a gray thinker. Somebody needs to help me with the black and white thinking.
I love it. Hey, we believe leadership is more about asking questions and giving answers. It's a perfect segue. You have a curious spirit, Luke. I know that you do too, Coach. When you came to Iowa, I'm wondering like what's going through your mind, and what's maybe been the biggest surprise about being in Iowa City? What's the thing that you maybe weren't expecting, weren't ready for?
Yeah, when I got here, I fortunately had done this just a year ago, and so it wasn't as tricky. Honestly, I don't think there's been a lot of surprises, to be perfectly honest. I think that the amount of support's been great and all those things, the community support. I will say, the tricky part about leadership, and this might be the surprise, the tricky part about leadership in today's kind of world is social media and access to information and false information. And so when you do that, you have to be so confident in your own beliefs, and you can't fight every battle. If somebody says something like, hey, he's this, and that's not true. Like, you don't have to fight every one of those battles. You just have to keep being who you are and keep being a good person, and eventually people will figure that out for themselves. That is tricky, and that might be the thing that can be overwhelming if you're not aware. And probably more so, because it's usually 3-4 people that would say something about it, and it's just like, oh, that's not true at all. But as long as you're confident in that you're always doing the right thing, that's really what matters, and that's true.
I'm gonna ask Luke the same question, but before we ask you about Iowa City, best surprise. I think what you said about the noise being greater, the opportunity is greater, the lights are brighter, the noise is greater at this level. And I've watched you navigate that well. What do you think is the biggest surprise in Iowa City?
I'll be truthful. I had never been east of Des Moines in Iowa before I took a job. So my perception of
Everything's a surprise.
everything I went was honestly negative of like, no offense to Lubbock. I lived in a place that wasn't great, but the support and the university, the people around make it great. It's where makes it great, So I'm like, I'm going from, a bad spot to another bad spot. Just, it is what it is. And then I got here, I'm like, there's these things that grow out of the ground and they go tall and they have used to call trees, and there's like green grass. And it's like things that are like refreshing to you that you just don't see in Lubbock much. So the surprise is I see why a lot of the ex-athletes come back and live here. I see why you feel the genuine like care for like Iowa's a Hawkeye state. No, I didn't know that because I only had exposure to Iowa State being in the Big 12. And you when you're a part of it, you kind of feel like the significance of it, and you see a place that actually is like desirable to be at and live, and we found great community here with people that have nothing to do with Iowa basketball, which is awesome. It shows you the people, and it feels like being from Kansas. It feels like home. It feels so much more like home than our previous spot. And that was not what I expected. I expected like, hey, I'm gonna love working for Coach. I want to go there. I want to be a part of something that is great. I want to win, and I want to do things that are all these, exterior motivation things that are great. But they're like, to have our family here, to be a part of the Iowa community and be a part of people in Iowa City had been phenomenal, and that was a surprise. And maybe I'm just down that I didn't do enough research on where I was moving to, but that's probably the truth.
I probably didn't do enough, but
We're just trying to get you out to Solon where Ben and I are at.
Yeah.
That's the next step in the Barnwell family journey. I'm confident. We're praying about that. I do want to talk a little hoops. So before we let you go, season's around the corner. As we record this, we're 2 weeks from tip-off. What are you most excited about before the 2025-26 season tips off?
Just competition, just competing. I absolutely love competing. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do. It sometimes doesn't seem like it, because there's a level of game day misery that goes on. But I think challenging yourself, I think competing, I think forcing yourself to have faith when you're not totally sure, where you're going to be at the end of the season. And there's a level of suffering that goes with that. But there's also a level of growth that goes with that too. And the best way to do it is through competition. And so I'm excited about that.
Well said. What are you excited for, Luke?
I kind of piggyback off that. Like, you start at a place and with a team, and you feel like, you watch them every day and you're like, are we ever going to get this figured out? And then I always love perspective at the end of the year. And like, cause more often than not for me, we've been significantly better at the end of the year. So, and the old adage of like the joy is in the journey. It's not joyful in the moment, but when you have perspective, you realize like how fun that year is. And like, the word perspective is important to me because you'll look back and say like, oh, these are the moments that like the misery that you get through, you sludge through, you get through, you fight through, you battle through, and like it at some point becomes worth it. And so, the wins will take care of itself if you have that approach. And I think it comes from him, and that's what we do.
Luke, you said this. You think the team will be adaptable. You said that Coach is willing to play any style that fits the guys that you have on the roster. You've also talked a lot about defense. I want to hear directly from Coach. What can Hawkeye fans expect from this year's team?
Well, if you're asking me today, not a lot of defense, because we didn't play a lot of defense in practice.
It's the wrong day to ask the question.
If you would have come here yesterday, I'd have been like, man, we're going to be pretty good. So, I think ultimately our goal is to create a level of physicality, to be super connected, to play as hard as anybody in the country, and legitimately work like that is ultimately our goal. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And so hopefully throughout the season, they'll see that, and they'll see a group that they're proud to cheer for.
Love it. Anything you want to add to that outside of defense?
Yeah, I just think that that's what he's always done. So I think where we're at right now, and I'll think 3 months from now, again, I think we'll be significantly better. But that's what we do. That's what he's always done. So
good. And one final question. I've heard you say this in multiple interviews. You talked about the moment that you were introduced, at some point you're introduced as head coach,
Mm-hmm.
and you heard the Iowa Fight song.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about this like, growing up a Hawkeye like you did, right? You're like, man, that's a song I've heard 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be sort of this surreal moment. It's like that song plays, but then it's head coach Ben McCollum. And somebody said, yeah, I bet you think about that. And you said, yeah, not too much, because if I think about it, I'll be a lesser version of myself,
Mm-hmm.
or it doesn't set me up for success. I think humility has been one of the things that's defined your journey, kept you grounded. Heard you reference humility a lot, talk about humility a lot. What does humility mean to Ben McCollum?
I think it's probably a level of staying present. So we, the book Ego is the Enemy we just talked about is the work is the win. And I think a lot of times the work is the win. And I think often, and even I'm guilty of it on occasion, is you can try to find a sense of arrival because you think that's going to make you feel better. And a lot of times it really doesn't. It just kind of makes you lazy, essentially. And so it stops your growth. It stunts it. But you're always searching for this sense of joy that you think is out there. And a lot of times it's just more of a contentment. It's more of a present mentality than it is this earth-shattering, exciting joy that you're going to experience. It's just more, I'm content. I'm happy to serve people. I enjoy my life, and that's what it is. And so yeah, I mean, that's part of the humility part of it is understanding that you're really not that special, but your greatest strength is your ability to serve others and make a difference there, and then you become pretty special.
Yeah, well said. Luke, would you add to that? You've talked about coach's humility. What's humility mean to you?
I mean, I think he does this. That's a crazy good example, and man, you probably don't remember this, but when we were solo, I also tried back in Lubbock, I asked you, like, hey, you got any books or whatever to listen to? And you sent me, like, Beauty Goes the End. You sent me, like, 4 or 5 books that were, like, all pretty much based in humility, and it was something I think I was raised with. Like, my parents did a good job of, like, teaching me that. And so there's obviously times where you fail at it. But, like, if anybody were to tell you that they're there where they're at where they're currently at because of what they've done, it's so short-sighted. Because there's always people along the way that are a part of any journey you're on that are going to help you and push you. And I could think of hundreds of people in the last 15 years of my life that have made a huge impact on my life that got me to a post like this. And so as soon as I turn my focus on to what I've done, that's shame on me. That's pretty embarrassing not to be appreciative of people you're around every day, and then it can never be about the 3-foot circle you walk in. Typically, yeah, short-sighted.
Yeah, amen. God opposes the proud, gives grace to the humble. I think you guys have modeled that really well. Final thoughts that you would share with our audience, and specifically Hawkeye Nation. Anything you want to share before we sign off?
Boy, that's not totally. I mean, I think that obviously from a Hawkeye perspective, we always try to share just we're going to try to make people proud, and hopefully again we can make a difference in the state of Iowa and whatnot. From a leadership perspective, I probably some of the better coaching advice that I've been given was making sure that you be you as a coach. And it came from actually Emporia State. Brandon Schneider, he's the head coach at Kansas now. Just be you as a coach. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, of course I'm going to be me. And my first year I tried to be Steve Tapmeyer, who was the best coach I've ever been around. Failed. Tried to be David Moe after that. Best offensive coach I've been around. Failed. And so then I'm like, you know what? I probably should be myself. And this is what he was talking about, is being genuine as to who you are. It doesn't mean you don't take bits and pieces of other people's leadership style, but there still has to be a genuineness to who you are. And then people generally will just follow that. You don't have to, there's no trick to being a good leader. There's certain nuances that you need to be aware of, but there's not like a trick or a cliche that can help you become one.
I was thinking about a conversation I had back in May with Buzz Williams, Luke. And I said, you've been around Ben McCollum and Luke Barnwell a little bit. And I talked to Coach Showalter, and the themes before you guys got here were good people who treat people well. And I thought that was a real compliment, coming from some of your peers and people that know basketball at a high level. But the first comments weren't about basketball. It's about your leadership and who you are as people. So So we're excited to win a lot of games.
Right.
We hope you tear it up on the court.
It's all about winning.
It's all about winning. That's right. But you might also treat people well.
There you go.
Hey, thank you guys for being here. This is the busiest time of your year.
Yep. Thank you.
We appreciate the
you having us
time,
on.
the energy, the insight. Go Hawks.